Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Incomplete Skeptic Sober Wise Guy series. In this Sober Wise Guy thing, we interview old timers. Old timers are people that are sober or clean from either alcohol or drugs, generally alcohol, for at least 30 years. And today's guest is Howard A. We are not showing his face because of the anonymity in case he mentions the 12-step program discipline by name accidentally, then it would be an issue. So, and he chose to stay anonymous, and we're going to go with that. Welcome to the show, Howard.
Thanks, Timothy.
You're very welcome. So, what is your sober date? And what discipline are you in? I don't mean like the name of the organization, but.
Oh, well, let's see. My sobriety date is November 1st, 1984.
Oofta.
That's 38 years last November. And my discipline, I don't know if you mean my, I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I am definitely both.
Oh, okay. Kind of like the chapter in the textbook that is otherwise known as the Big Book, Dr. Alcoholic Addict. You can be both, right?
Well, I apparently.
Evidently you can.
I've been both for a while now. I have to assume it's the case.
So the alcohol one is pretty easy to sort out, and you know, but what was the other addiction?
Oh, well, it was, let's see, there was cocaine is what I bottomed on.
Oh, okay.
I also did a number of I had a pill addiction. Tuinol, carbitol, any tolitol was just fine. I was into different pills a lot too, and marijuana and that whole scene.
So you're into more.
Yeah, I was definitely into more, or whatever you got, one or the other.
Gotcha. To some extent in recovery, I think old timers can be in certain situations marginalized. And I've noticed on occasion that people assume old timers don't need positive reinforcement, or that they have just big egos because they're sober a long time, which to me means like you really don't understand sobriety, because no one stays sober on arrogance. You know, you can put the cork in the bottle, but that's great. But sober, clean, and serene are totally different things, and people don't, it's not like our egos disappear.
No,
I don't want to overanalyze it, but on the other hand, ego doesn't keep you sober. If anything, ego
absolutely, it keeps you learning.
Yeah, it keeps you. Boy, well, I'm quite a student then.
Yeah, you're not the only one,
right?
But absolutely, ego has to be squashed, and a spiritual way of life, just for me, has to be in place, or it's all meaningless.
Yeah. The newcomers are vitally important in the body of recovery. But in that body, the old timers, I think, could be viewed as the backbone. And in just the way I look at it, God is the spirit of the body, or the spirit of recovery, and has all power. And I think one of the things I really have noticed through the years is that old timers are not judgmental about which higher power you choose. And what's your take on that? Did your higher power help you get and stay sober?
Oh, yeah. I mean, without question. And I had a lot of trouble when I first got sober, even identifying with this idea, because I was so alienated from God. I mean, God to me was someone that killed people in plane crashes or pulled the wings off flies. I mean, it was not a very nice guy,
Mm-hmm.
And So I know now, having worked the program for a number of years, that I couldn't have. The first way I related to a higher power after I got sober was, how did I get home all those nights? How did I not run and get myself killed or kill someone else? I mean, how is it even? It wasn't like I was seeing just triple on the roadway. I was seeing like kaleidoscope on the roadway, and how in the world there had to be something there getting me home, guiding me unbeknownst to me. And it had to be a power obviously greater than me. And that was the very beginnings of some kind of idea as to what a higher power could be. Now, as I've gone through sobriety, I feel like in some ways I know more, in some ways I know less. And certainly the idea that I could even conceive of what that higher power is certainly ego. And so how can I not be anything but humble about what else someone believes? Because really, I mean, I'm going to sit here and tell you what it is. It's a little outrageous to me. So yeah, I'm very open-minded as to what people choose as their higher power. Very much so.
I have someone near and dear to my heart who has expressed that exact same quandary about how did I ever get home? Driving the way I was driving, somebody else must have been driving the car because I didn't even remember getting home. I would hear things like that. And, through the years, I've heard that co-signed in so many different ways. But yeah, I can see that as being a significant wake-up call.
Well, that's where it started for me.
So your relationship with a higher power was, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but seeing that the impossible was actually possible. It's like I couldn't have done that by my own power.
Right.
Alone.
No.
Yeah.
No. And I'm convinced of that more than ever. And I'm convinced that I am less and less in charge of what's going on in my world than I ever imagined I would be. And that I'm okay. Finally got to a point where I was completely okay with relinquishing that fantasy of control and turning it over to that power. And that is what has worked for me in my recovery in spades.
Got it. I am gonna get rid of my face here, so we'll be on we just have a double screen here. So I want to get into some a few questions. It's like, what were you like before you sobered up?
Let's just say if my life was a baseball game, it was Howard. No runs, no hits, and so many errors, everybody left the ballpark. And I was just waiting for the next pitch that never came.
Wow.
Complete state of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. And I'll try to give you some pictures of it. Let's see. Got to my first meeting. My hair was filthy, matted down onto my head, holes in my socks, my shoes, my underwear, buttons missing, zippers didn't work. My skin was gray and green. Wow. And I walked into my first meeting like that.
Goodness.
Basically total washout from at every level.
Yeah, I think I walked in smelling like a brewery myself in Death Warmed Over, but I wasn't green and gray.
Oh yeah. In fact, the first 30 days they weren't sure if I was an alcoholic or a lizard, because I changed colors so many times the first 30 days.
Oh goodness. Wow. So this is really putting a hammer on your organs and skin being a major organ.
For all intents and purposes, I should have been institutionalized, but I was not. And I did it without any kind of treatment or hospitalization. which I should have done. But
Yeah, same here, but I sobered up in the 12-step program myself. I did not go to treatment.
me too.
I was
Me too.
too arrogant for treatment personally. Because you actually have to do what they tell you in treatment. I said, I'm an alcoholic, and there's an old joke about it. You can always tell an alcoholic, you can't tell them much. Or they say it
Yeah.
about Norwegians too. I mean, but so I guess I'm just wondering what your very first moment of clarity was in a meeting, or however that came about.
Oh
I
yeah.
know you
Oh yeah.
touched on, the higher power part. Got that. But do you remember that?
Oh, absolutely. My first meeting, and I was not sober. My first meeting, and I was sat through this meeting, and at the end of the meeting, I was in awe that there might actually be an explanation for someone like me.
Hmm.
I was in awe of that thought.
Wow. I think I suffered from terminal uniqueness myself, and I had a similar feeling, but I didn't see anyone trying to get anything from me other than my own happiness. And they didn't care if I was an ex-convict. They didn't care if I was a drug addict or an alcoholic or anything. It was you know, um, it was a closed meeting for alcoholics, but they always had drug addicts that sat in on them. And, but they identified as alcoholics generally. But, no
Which
one
I
made a
do.
big
I mean,
fuss. Yeah, yeah,
if you're in AA, I always say I'm an alcoholic because I know I am, in fact, an alcoholic.
yeah.
So it's really not a question for me, but my story is my story, and I'm going to tell the truth. So that's my
Sure,
story.
sure.
My story is mixed, definitely not pure alcohol by any means. But it's funny because after that first meeting, my ex is the one that took me to the meeting. She had been going to meetings before me, and it's a long story, but I went to this meeting, and I lost my job, so I had nothing else to do, so I went with her to the meeting. And she
So
said, "Well,
she
tell
was in
people."
sobriety?
She was in sobriety, yes.
Okay, okay.
She
Sorry to
wasn't
interrupt.
sober very long, but she was going to meetings and so on.
Okay.
Um, and she said, "Well, tell everybody you lost your job." So I said, "Okay, all right." So I walked up to people afterwards and I said, "Hi, I'm Howard. I lost my job." And they looked at me and said, "That's great." And I thought, "That's great. I lost my job." And I walked up to someone else and said, "Hi, I'm Howard. I lost my job." And he said, "It's a miracle." And I'm thinking, where the hell am I? What? It's a miracle? Congratulations, you lost your job? Of course, now I know where they were going, but at the time I was just a little confused. But at the
I
same time, people would say, "Well, keep coming back," and no one had said that to me in a very long time. So, that and the fact that it seemed everyone was so peculiar, and I thought maybe there's an explanation for me. That's what kept me coming back, even though I did not immediately get sober.
That is cool. And I think I just love that about people in recovery is they see every difficulty as a blessing in disguise. And it's like hardly a soul walks in because, their life was going so stellar. So we're not so unusual,
No, yeah, right. We
you
weren't on a
know.
winning streak, as they
Yeah,
say.
yeah. And, I've seen a lot of different things get people in the program of recovery. And, I've seen the nudge from the judge,
Mm.
but, a person can show up because the courts tell you to, but it doesn't mean you're going to listen or do anything internally. But occasionally somebody wakes up and goes, "Oh, I just thought this was all garbage until I started listening to people that are just like me." And, I find that very powerful. And even when they're not just like me, like, not too many people have served 13 and a half years in prison.
Mm.
Like in my case, didn't have my history of racism and et cetera. You know, some of my mental illness, people didn't have those particular issues. They had other issues. And I just saw people following what they call it the traditions. For those that don't know what that is, there's 12 traditions, just like there's 12 steps. But they said the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, not the ability
Yep.
to stop drinking, just a desire.
Wasn't that an amazing call on the part of Bob and Bill? I mean,
Oh yeah.
that being the only requirement, that is really it's so important, I believe.
Bill and Bob, in case those people listening might not know, those are the two primary originators of the 12-step program as it exists in the United States in the 30s. I think it was 39. It might have been 35. I get confused between the 12 steps origins and the 12 traditions origins. If you remember the dates.
I don't remember the exact date. No.
Okay. But in the other tradition that they said in the first meeting, they actually read the third and the fifth tradition. And the third tradition is the only requirement for membership, you know, and which is basically we have to decide ourselves if we want to be a member. You know, do we have a desire? And they used to say an honest desire, and at some point they decided to scrap the honest desire and just say desire. And because they thought that the door was too narrow or constrictive to say honest desire, because who's to say, you know, if someone's really honest or not? Heck, we don't always know until we know that we're not being honest with ourselves until we've done a lot of work, and then we can start seeing through our own stuff. But a newcomer might not have a clue about what an honest desire is, but they do know what a desire to stop drinking is. So, you know, that's how I view the third tradition and my comprehension of it. And the fifth tradition was also read. Those are the only two they read in my first meeting. And that was that the only requirement for, our primary purpose is to help the still suffering alcoholic. So
Which can be anyone who's there.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Right. And you can be sober 30 years, but if you're an alcoholic and you're suffering for whatever reason, it didn't say, you know, that you had to be an active relapse or something necessarily, or on the verge. You can, but you don't have to be, whatever that looks like. But generally, I was really quite happy that they didn't say the only requirement and the only primary purpose was put money in the plate when it comes around. You know, what can we get from you? Instead, they were saying that we're here for you to help the still suffering alcoholic, whoever that is. So it's like it was very altruistic. And my perspective on Christianity in its pure form, just like Judaism in its pure form and many other religions, is that they're selfless. It's meant to be selfless. I rarely saw it in my experience, people practicing that so much. And I had kind of a bad attitude in some ways about some aspects of Christianity. So, you know, I'm not exactly being objective on that one, or I wasn't. And but I saw people practicing what I thought the purity of Christianity was supposed to be, that we just love each other. And they had that up on the wall, love one another. So, you know, I just saw all these beautiful things going on, and I wanted that. I wanted what they had. I wanted to be that kind of person, and I was willing to listen to somebody else for the first time. And how hard was it for you to listen the first time? I mean, to really listen, like to do something someone maybe suggested.
Well, how hard was it for me? You know, I was terrible at asking for help, first of all, for sure. And, but taking direction, you know, I guess in my own mind, I had an interpretation of what that was. So for example, I was asked to do an inventory by my sponsor. So instead of actually reading how to do one, I just kind of did one the way I thought it should be done and laid out, like, I think it was like a page of 25 resentments. It's all I put was, I resent, I resent, I resent, I resent, down a piece of paper. Then I called my sponsor and I said, well, I'm ready to do my fifth step. And he said, okay, great. So I went to see him, and there was, I just read these resentments, and he kind of looked at me, is that it? I said, well, yeah, that's it. He says, well, that's not a fourth step, you know? So I was good at following what I thought were the directions. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. What is a fourth step for those that maybe don't know?
Well, let's see. I'm not sure I've got it even word for word anymore. I've done quite a few of them, but
well, sure. It's just generally doing our interior
inventory
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Personal inventory. Yeah.
Right.
A searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Yeah. As I remember it. I really
Yep.
tried very hard, Howard, to not memorize the steps.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so I wouldn't start thinking that my program is all about me, and I'm relying on my own thinking, and you know, that's just how I decided to
You know,
do
it's
it.
funny that you brought this up, because it crossed my mind the other day that I don't even remember. I used to know all this, and I'm still an active member of the program. But, you know, I mean, it's like I just am living my life now.
Yeah.
It's just part of it's just kind of like background noise now. I mean, I sponsor people, I walk them through steps. That's always what I do when I sponsor people, is focus on the steps, always. Because it revealed so much to me in my experience. But you know, I mean, I was kind of lost my way there for a second, but I'm trying to live my life and not, the problem is I don't want to buy into techniques in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I do something and it works, then I want to do it again. So it works again. And then all of a sudden it becomes a technique and not something organic that I'm just living and experiencing. And over the years, just live my life, and I'm doing what I do on the steps and this way of life. And even other things I've adapted from outside of the program are part of who I am now, that I just live quite naturally. It's not a plan anymore. It's not like a technique. It's not like a, you know, and I do this not because I'm doing it, I'm doing my program in some sort of perfunctory manner, like ritualistic or with little effort or any of that. It's just that I know what my priorities are. And each day I just focus on my priority, which is, of course, letting my higher power know his will is the most important thing to me today. So if I have anything that's a standard or a doctrine or a practice, that's it each day. That's what I do every single day. First thing, I let my higher power know, you're the most important thing to me today. Your will, that's the most important thing to me. And nothing else is going to get in front of that.
I'm liking it. And the not relying on your own thinking in terms of technique, I think that's the value of being around for a while. You learn how to put words to things, and you can see around corners maybe that someone that hasn't been around as long can see around. And you know, I was going to ask you, how do you stay sober? You've already said it. We might want to clarify a little bit on it for the listeners, but I'm thinking, you mentioned sponsoring people or walking someone through the program. I think the words might have been what you said, but either way, sponsoring someone, it's kind of like seeing around those corners and you're telling them how you did it. It's like you're advising your younger self how to handle life, what you would have told yourself if you would have, you were talking to yourself in a way,
Yeah.
because, we're all in this together. So we
Yep.
program, as they say. And
Well, someone once told me that the greatest gift you can ever give is the one you didn't get.
mm, wow.
So I practice that at every opportunity in which I'm aware that's what's operating.
When I listen to other podcasts, and I listen to quite a few different recordings of various things, and when the podcast interviewer hears someone say something they really like, they usually repeat it. And I always think, he just said that and you're simply repeating it. But the reason people do that is because it's the thing that got their attention, and the technique, I'm going to steal that from you. Those words actually are better words than the ones that I gave to it. But so I'm going to move to another question here, if you're all right with that.
Sure.
What really positive experiences in recovery have shaped you into the person you are today? I mean, you can pick any of them, or big ones, small ones, a bunch of them, cumulative impact,
Well,
whatever.
a lot of them weren't positive at the time.
Right.
The experiences that ended up shaping me were often the ones that were the most difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I think of one, like, and I know you've heard me share about this before amongst our friends,
Mm-hmm.
but I had a relationship I got sober with. I mentioned she took me to my first meeting, and about a little over a year in, she gave me notice that she was leaving. And I was very angry at her, very resentful towards her and her sponsor for this. And she gave me literally 8 days that she was leaving me. So 8 days, so I called somebody that I respected, and I told him what happened. He says, well, when she comes to say goodbye, you have to put your arms around her, tell her you love her, and you hope she gets what she wants. And I was like, I didn't exactly say nice words in response to this suggestion.
Yeah.
However, when the time came and she came to see me and she said goodbye, I put my arms around her. I told her, I love you and I hope you get what you want. And I watched 8 years of my life walk out the door.
Mm.
And when I tell you that was one of the best moments, that was maybe the best moment of my second year of sobriety. That was it. Because I had never, ever let go of anybody with love.
Nice.
So it was painful, it was difficult, but it was a big growth for me.
Yeah, I think
So
a
a
lot
lot
of
of those
people
things.
detach, but they don't detach with love. And boy, I think you hit it right there.
Another episode that was huge for me, I share about it when I speak on occasion, but at one point in my sobriety, money became my higher power, or at least it was jogging for influence with my higher power. And I had this business and I had grown up a certain way with certain people and they had become enormously successful. And I thought, okay, now that I'm sober, I have to catch up with these guys, So I started this business and I was promoting events, sales training events, not concerts, not that sort of thing, but sales training events all over the country and training hundreds of thousands of realtors actually. And and so I became so involved in this business. It became so important to me that it becomes successful and that I make a lot of money, that there was a day when I was in Seattle and I had promoted an event and I was screaming at this woman who was just trying to help me. And I was screaming at her in front of everyone. And I completely humiliated myself. And, I made more money that day in one day than I had ever made in any year of my life. And I was a complete maniac.
Wow.
And fortunately, I was sober enough still to have the awareness that, this outside stuff, the money, the house, the business, the quote unquote respect, that is not going to fix me. This is nothing outside of me is going to do it. Nothing.
Bingo.
And that is when I really, and I had turned inward before. Absolutely. I'd worked in introspective program. I wasn't, I just said I had somehow, as a few years developed into this business, forgot all that, you know what I mean? And got all wrapped up in this success thing. And it all came crashing down on me. And I realized, you know what? That is never going to give me what I want out of life. It's got to be an inside job. I have to have that spiritual connection. That's what will fix me. And that's what has worked for everything else since then. That as long as I've got that connection spiritually, I can weather anything. And you probably, I mean, I know you know that I had cancer at one point, and I had another divorce at one point, and I've walked through these things, but because of that spiritual connection, none of it has been that debilitating. And you know what? All that and even more that I haven't even mentioned, I didn't once think about having a drink.
Nice.
Again, it's like that. How did I get home all those nights? It's that same power operating. It has to be. It couldn't have been me.
Yeah. I've seen that quite a few times too. I hear you. Hey, I think it's one thing to have a spiritual experience. It's another thing to have spiritual awareness. People can have spiritual experiences
And do
until the cows come home, but until they're aware they had one. It's like, you're surviving getting home and you're not knowing, how that happened. That didn't cross your mind so much in a way that mattered until you became aware of it. It's like you were having the spiritual experiences. You got, it's like you were walking on water, but you didn't know you were being saved from yourself over and over and over and over again. If you will. It's just unusual way of phrasing it, I suppose. But I think the spiritual awareness is like a gift, and
absolutely.
It's one you accept.
The law has an interesting definition for a gift, Timothy. A gift is a gift when it is accepted. If it isn't accepted, it isn't a gift.
Oh, interesting. I like that. I've heard you say that before, but I didn't put it in the context of spiritual experience and awareness. That is good.
I don't remember saying that for a very long time either.
No, I remember you saying it. I mean, I might look like my eyes are crossed and my head is tilted in meetings, but I do.
Yeah,
I do listen.
Exactly. A lot of this, and who knows where a lot of this comes from anyway, right? Where did I hear it? I mean, I'm pretty much just passing it on.
Yeah, talent on loan from God.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you meditate, or I think you probably pray? I don't know what praying and meditate looks like in your life.
I pray regularly. I meditate. That's more like something that I have to kind of feel almost like I need to do. And in my own way, just like everything else we've shared about at this point, I just kind of fall into it as needed, sort of a thing. Is something in the big book about being in the stillness. And to me, that's what it is. No matter what's going on, if I can get myself in the stillness and the quiet and listen and just feel whatever I'm feeling, let myself have it without acting on it. It will, I can then connect with a power greater than myself, at least at some level. And to me, that is the meditative piece of this, is that connection.
That's the glue that holds your recovery together, in a manner of speaking.
Yeah.
One day at a time.
Right. And read the 10th step for me again, real quick.
When we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Yeah.
And saw through meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood it. So
Oh,
that
the
is
11 steps.
precisely
Got
what
it.
I'm doing when I do that quote unquote meditation. For me. And there have been times over the years where I've gotten more into it as a practice. Like I took a couple classes on meditation, and my lady that I live with, she loves to have me meditate with her from time to time, where we just sit quietly, face each other, and close our eyes and meditate together. And she will lead that meditation. That to me is the little different, though. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's a little like, gravy. The real meat and potatoes is getting that connection for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, if it wasn't for the connection, all of this would have been kind of useless. The fellowship or
Absolutely.
the connection, call it what you will. But it's one thing to,
All of it.
yeah. You can rub shoulders with somebody and shake hands and all that. But if you're not connecting spiritually, then it's kind of like a waste of time. Everything can be going really good in life on the outside, but I've seen people that got great lives on the outside, and inside they're miserable.
Oh yeah.
And they don't like themselves and they don't like other people, or they're mistaking what it is they're in pain about, and it's like the song we sing before we come into gratitude is kind of a sad song in a way, but if it's the only song we know, why are we going to sing something differently, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and speaking of songs, this is a tangent question, I guess. What do you have a favorite song or a favorite band?
Oh geez, I don't. That I can't say that I do. I remember as a youngster loving "You Are My Sunshine," but I used to sing it incessantly. But not, I mean, there's so much wonderful music out there. It's really hard for me to categorize it. I don't know. I suppose, I don't know. I love the Stones. I'll always love the Stones, and
Mhm.
Fleetwood Mac, and I mean, just my age group stuff,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
but still, I mean, uh, no, I can't say there is anything. It's just so when someone asks me, I used to be an actor, and people often ask me, "What's your favorite movie?" And I said, "I don't have favorite movies. I have favorite moments."
Yeah, there you go.
And I grab those moments and I go, "That is amazing." But not for me to pick a favorite movie, it's almost impossible. I can't do it. And this is similar to that for me, is pick your favorite song and pick your favorite group and pick your favorite actor. And you know what I mean? I just can't do
Sure,
it.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm one of those weirdos that actually do kind of have a favorite collection of songs and the like, but is there any song that
What's the one though?
yeah, that's a very difficult one. Regarding sobriety, a friend of mine is a musician, and he went out to uh, play in Rochester for some people that were in treatment. I
Hmm.
think they were in the Mayo doing their treatment, if I remember right. But in any case, he wrote a song for them, and it was about changing, his life, and as if he was going through what they were going through, and but he was just singing about gratitude, and I'm mental blocking the name. I don't know if you can tell, but um, um,
Nice. Very
yeah.
nice.
But it's Michael Monroe is a guy's name. He's wearing all black. Go on YouTube and put in Michael Monroe Mayo Clinic, and it'll show up.
Okay.
But that just reminds me of the people that I connected with in sobriety, and it just meant so much to me. And so I don't know, I guess if I'm going to have a grateful heart going on, then it's hard to go off track. It's like everything you hear when
Mm.
you're grateful, it becomes beautified. Whether it's like I have two favorite poets, W.H. Auden and E.E. Cummings, and they were quite different from each other, but they each wrote poems that changed the way I view life. And the 12 steps, they change the way I view life. And then I'll hear a certain song and I'll be so impacted by it that um, that it'll just my worldview has changed so many times, and
Hmm.
it's hard to say, well, how can that even be? But it's like usually people will have an epiphany, and that's it. They had an epiphany. But it's like I've had so many, and I don't know if I'm just what that even means, but
Well, I don't know. I think
what
about
I needed most. I had to go look it up, Howard. What I needed
Mhm.
most. And that's the song. And I'll put
Oh,
that song in the link at the um on the recording of this video. So thanks
okay.
for
Thank
being
you.
patient with me there. Yeah, sure.
Sure, sure.
So um you've heard the saying that we have a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. You've kind of laid that out, what that means to you. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that idea.
Well, it's kind of interesting to me because to me, this is something that if you practice it on a daily basis, you build up a cumulative reward. So yeah, it's a daily reprieve every day, but that doesn't mean there wasn't yesterday. And to me, if I'm making a consistent practice of connecting in this way and doing the prayer and doing the meditation and prioritizing my life, I'd almost like my center of gravity gets stronger. And it becomes very difficult for anything to throw me off. Now, don't get me wrong. I can overreact to things. I still do. And I still suffer from a lot of the mental ills that I've carried with me throughout my sobriety. It's just how they manifest now and how they are managed and how I react and respond to those things that has completely changed. So that, um, if I have this center of gravity that's in place and something hits me, I can actually see it two ways at once, or I can actually remember how this used to affect me and doesn't now. It's almost like where you were going before about perception.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, if I'm better, everything gets better. And the reason I know it's all about my perception is there are times when I'll look at something today and I'll be very unhappy about it. And the next day I'll look at it and it's the same thing it was yesterday, but I feel completely differently about it.
Huh.
And that's my argument that this is a disease of perception. I mean, if I'm
Yeah.
better, everything gets better. So the result of that for me has been I have this stronger center. It's all God to me from God. And I am able to withstand all kinds of batterings,
So
and attacks and assaults and everything
yeah.
else. I can weather it much more just because I'm able to give it to my higher power. And it just kind of like, it bounces off of me, a lot of it. Stuff that used to, stuff that used to baffle us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That now is completely manageable.
Yeah. The emotional triggers come back periodically, at least for me, and
Oh yeah, they
stress.
do.
The
Oh yeah.
letting go, so I can have letting go is my system for stress management. but I still remember things
And
that
acceptance too.
and acceptance, right? You're right. Yeah. When I experience problems, if I throw acceptance at it, the problems just transform,
Hmm.
and
That's the way I look at defective characters now too. Defective character is that it's not something that's gone, it just morphs, and it's being used by my higher power to construct some constructive end, to which I could never imagine half the time when it turns out well. That power is so
uh,
vast and so great. I mean, the way things unfold is completely, I could never have imagined it or predicted it in a way I never would have thought it.
yeah, I
And
think isolation from that power is a problem. That's what alcohol and drugs do. Is it's like a rapist. It catches you in a corner and it's got you all alone and you're isolated.
yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
spiritual jail.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I think it's spiritual prison.
Huh. Yeah, I heard that the most secure prison is the one we construct for ourselves, and oftentimes we
Mhm.
don't even know we're in it. But um, what do you ever isolate now, or I mean, do you ever
No, not
feel
really.
okay? Yeah, cool.
Not like anything like I mean, there are times when I have a lot of relationships and I have work relationships. I have a relationship with Sally, and we're very intimate and with each other a lot. But there are times when I do need to be kind of by myself, but just get away for a day or two and do something different, or just get
Oh
my
yeah.
head out of things. And that's, but that's nothing compared to, what I was before.
Mhm.
You know, the isolation was so much a part of my drinking and using. And it was like a partner really in the whole thing. Even when I was with other people.
Yeah, especially it's even more.
Yeah.
It feels more
Completely alone.
lonely. Yeah,
Completely alone. Yes. Absolutely. But not now. No, I don't think so.
cool.
Thanks for asking me that question, because I haven't
Yeah,
thought about it in a long time. And
I know. I'm
that is
I'm
the
actually
truth.
doing
I
that.
have friends now. I have relationships. People depend on me. I interact with people. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
um, yeah, and there's no really any desire. I mean, last week I had to spend a couple days in Milwaukee, and I spent a lot of that time by myself. And after a while, I got really tired of it. It just wasn't all that
Yeah.
interesting anymore. I wanted to go out and react and do things and be with people and engage. You know,
Mhm.
that's a
Yeah.
blessing. That's a real blessing too from recovery.
Amen. Yeah, I'm an introvert myself, so I do regroup by being alone. But I'm not lonely when I'm doing that,
Hmm.
and I'm not pushing people
Right.
away. It's just my nature. I just do need a little time, but I love people. I absolutely love people. I can't imagine life not being
But
around
again,
people.
that's not isolation.
No, not isolation. Absolutely.
Mm-mm.
And
Some
you know
people are
the
just more naturally a little withdrawn. I think of myself that way oftentimes.
Mhm. Well, I think what I like, one of the things I like about you, and having observed you for a couple of years now, it's hard to believe it's been that long,
Mm.
but and um, people like and respect you, and and they get happy when you talk, and the important thing about that for me, I'm glad they're happy. That's why we're on Earth, is to do that. And but the reason I like interviewing old timers is, most old timers, if not the entirety of them, don't let it go to their head. They're just
Mm.
grateful. They're just so happy that someone
No
else is
way.
happy, you know?
Yeah,
And
totally. I know.
yeah, and I always scale back when someone says something good about me. I have to make sure that my ego isn't so big that I put down the compliment. So it's the flip side of the coin, is that I'm trying to shrink myself, and instead of just accepting the gratitude from someone, I have this predisposition. It's called learned helplessness, victim mentality, things that comes up, but it's very brief. And, I
Mhm.
don't sit and stew in it, but it comes up,
Mhm.
and, it'll be there until I don't need it anymore. I guess, I don't know how else to describe what's behind that.
Mhm.
But it's just another way of saying old timers aren't perfect. I mean, I'm not sober 38 years, but I'm
Frankly, I
in my
think I
30s.
remember being a newcomer and loving that. Oh, I
Yeah,
don't have to get perfect. Thank God, that guy's really
I
weird.
know. Uh,
Oh my gosh, I
yeah,
don't have to. Yeah, okay, good. And that was always a big positive for me.
there's there's a number of old timers in my first meeting, and one of them said, take what you like and leave the rest. And for me, that was very helpful to hear. I think that was a God thing. I needed to hear it at that moment. And he says, I'm unique just like everybody else. Same guy. And he just
Mhm.
had all these really cool sayings there. He would just distill life's problems into a few words. And you know,
Well, since we're
I don't know.
talking about long-term sobriety, and it's amazing to me, even to this day, that I can talk to my family and loved ones till I'm blue in the face. They will not understand what I'm talking about when it comes to alcoholism and drug addiction, because they are not that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I can talk to somebody with one day and they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Huh.
They can relate to me
Okay.
on an intimate level on those in that life and that, you know, vast destruction trail of it. But my family, they can't relate. They love me. I've completely turned around their judgment of me since I've gotten sober. Completely. That's completely changed. And such a great benefit. Now loved and totally respected by my family and totally welcome back and totally part of everything now, trusted, counted on. And but they still don't understand alcoholism and drug addiction. No way. And I'm the
Yeah.
only one anybody knows of in my immediate family. I'm the black sheep. I don't know how it happened,
Uh-huh.
but like I say, I can talk to newcomers and I can listen to them and I know exactly what they're talking about and they know exactly what I'm talking about.
I
And I love that.
me too, and I co-sign that. I mean, even in our marriages, sometimes a spouse might not get it.
Sally doesn't. No
Yeah,
way.
you
Why
know.
should she? She
Yeah,
doesn't
why
have to.
should she? There's no
Yeah.
need to. But
No.
it's really interesting though. It's like even my ex-wife who hated my going to meetings, she absolutely detested it and thought I was weak-minded because
Oh.
I believed in the third step. And she says, well, if you weren't so weak, you wouldn't have to ask God.
Mm.
You
Wow.
wouldn't, yeah. And and she's not an alcoholic, so
Hmm.
she's not gonna get that. And she told me to choose between meetings and her. And
Oh, oh
and I
boy.
said, well, I think I can have both, but if you don't think so, then that's your choice to make, not mine.
Mm.
I love you and I'm going to a meeting. That's the short version of what I said.
Yeah, I remember you sharing
Yeah,
about that. I
yeah.
like that. And well, what
Right?
are you going to do? Like you had a choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Just express love no matter what. It's like when you gave your departing loved one that hug and I wish you the best of love. That's what sobriety gave me. Instead of my copying an attitude and cussing her out or something, I stayed calm and I measured it out and I measured my words and I focused on my heart. And we're gentle with others and we're a little bit tough on ourselves maybe.
Hmm.
But yeah, they don't get it.
No. And
This I
yeah.
No, go for it. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
keep
just like I
yammering.
said before, they don't have to.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement. It's not their issue. It's mine. That's why I have to be very careful
Mhm.
about how I communicate about my issues, because I have
It
quite a few.
Oh, yeah, well,
We
yeah, we
haven't
all
been
do.
able to talk about
Yeah.
that whole thing,
Well, my
unfortunately, but
sponsor said if God removed all my defects of character, I'd disappear, and that's kind of the point, right?
yeah.
And I'll be glad when I disappear, because the smaller I get, the bigger God gets in that whole paradigm.
Mm.
But this next question it's going to sound odd to you because your ego is not, it might look at the word superheroes in a way that it dismisses the general concept. But what role would you play in a group of superheroes?
Hmm. What role would I play in a group of superheroes?
Yeah, or what I
I don't
put it
know.
another way, your
Sober man?
attribute.
Sober man?
Sober man, there it is. All right.
No matter what, he doesn't drink. Here, do
The
this
so-
to him. He won't drink. He'll do that. No, he
Right.
won't drink. It's a superhero. It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the God is the sun that shines on our cape and uniform, and without that, everything gets through our uniform. So I don't know. I'm just trying to think of the S on Superman's chest and it being Soberman instead.
Yeah, right.
So one of the superpowers I think I
Haven't
got.
given this a lot of thought, Timothy.
Yeah. No, I kind of guessed that. I try to construct some questions that maybe people don't
Because there might
really.
actually be a better superhero that I could model, but I'll go
Oh
with
yeah.
Sober Man.
Well, I'd say super listener.
Super listener. Wow.
Super listener, or super,
Would
that's
that
an
be
attribute
that would
more.
be your superhero?
Maybe I think my superpower has been not committing suicide. Because I struggled with that for most of my life, and still do on occasion, but it's just it's a thought, it's a feeling, and it goes away. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not going anywhere,
Right.
And for
Right.
some reason that learned damage is there, and it is what it is. But I know however difficult life is, it is more beautiful than it is difficult. Every ounce of grief that I've experienced in my life, and it's been really substantial. God is showing up when I gave it up. It's like when I give it up, God shows up and always beautifies the most difficult things in my life. And I just wait it out. I go, this feeling is going to pass. Something really beautiful, transcendent, whatever phrase you want to use, is going to happen.
And thank God it's never in our time. Otherwise, what? We'd be in total control of everything.
I know.
I mean,
That
thank
would be so
God it's
boring.
not in our time. And it happens, like I said earlier, in most unexpected and wonderful ways that never could have imagined. That's my experience.
Same here. I think I feel when I have the clues of the universe, if you will, when I'm getting tired, when I'm feeling depleted or challenged, it's because I'm trying to do it myself. And I'm relying on my own power, but I know when I rely on my higher power and I use the tools of the program, I get reinvigorated. And what was difficult one moment, but can become so, I think you use the word acceptance too. It's like a shortcut to serenity, to just let it go,
Absolutely.
And my
it's not always
problems
easy
are
to
of my
do,
own
though.
making.
I
no.
oftentimes I pray to let go, and then I struggle to let go.
Amen.
And the best thing I can do is start the process. But even that little bit, and we touched on this the other night too, didn't we? If I recall in a conversation, we only have to do a little bit to get so much back.
That's so good. I like that. That's you.
It's
You
so
said
amazing.
that. Yeah. I'm going to write that one down too. I've been taking notes here, so
Okay. And wouldn't it have to be like that for someone that came to the program as conditional and transactional as me? You could do a little and get a lot back. Pretty good deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I give it up, God shows up. Ain't no 3-day waiting period. And I actually heard that from a speaker at Gopher State, and he had done time, and he did more time than I did, and he was crazier than I was, which is hard to do. It
Mm.
takes a little, and
Oh yeah, we're around.
yeah, right. And he said that he stole his first big book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Oh, funny.
And I did too. And it never occurred to me to tell someone that until I heard him say it. And, some guy brought in a meeting to the prison and set down his big book to give someone a handshake or a hug. And I looked at the book and I stole it. And I walked out, stuck it under my shirt or whatever I did. I don't remember the details, but I stole this guy's book, and I'm sure he went to look for his book, like, what the heck happened to my book? And because I didn't want anyone to know I was going to read it,
Mm.
and I brought the book back to my cell, and periodically I tried to read it, and I just didn't. I got so frustrated; it didn't make any sense to me, So I still have that book, and I've tried to make indirect amends to the guy I stole it from by giving away a lot of big books through the years.
There you
And
go. There you go.
and then one day I was telling that story, Howard, at Gopher State, and in the main room, and this guy said that was my book and that was me, And I
Yeah.
knew he couldn't be lying because he was like 6'6", 6'8", just a huge guy, And so, oh, you were the one. He said, yeah, I brought a meeting into Stillwater, and somebody stole my book. And I thought, whatever. I said, well, do you want me to pay you back? And he said, no, it looks like you're working the program, and
Oh,
just
pretty cool.
we're good. We're good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some acronyms in recovery, one being HALT. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Hungry,
What
angry,
is the
lonely,
HALT?
tired.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, again, this also goes back to fit spiritual condition, daily reprieve, maintenance of our spiritual condition. I don't want to get too hungry. I don't want to get too angry. I don't want to get too lonely. And I don't want to get too tired. Because when any of those four, or all four, as the case may be, are happening, it's very uncomfortable, and it puts me in a bad place spiritually. And when I'm in that kind of a place, then things tend to look pretty bad. And remember, I said sometimes if I'm better, everything looks better.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not, it doesn't.
Yep.
That kind of goes to this. I mean, in that it's not a good idea for anyone, particularly newcomer, about or anyone really, but there's times you'll experience in your sobriety where it's like, I need a meeting. You just get that feeling like you're just not in a good place. You're just out of sorts. And I guess the most guilty things that get you there the fastest are probably hunger, anger, loneliness, and tiredness. And if you can avoid those things and kind of balance life out for yourself and just take care of yourself, basic, good, solid common sense, take care of yourself and not get into any one of these conditions too much, you're going to stay pretty stable, pretty well balanced. If not, you're going to start to get irritable. You're going to start to feel distress. You're going to react. You're going to get into dark thoughts. And at least that's my experience anyway.
Yeah, for real. It's like guilt is resentment against self, more or less.
Guilt to me is a power grab.
Yeah. I always liked that. I remember when you said that, and I repeated that to someone.
I mean, it's like it's like all the stuff that I did, terrible things, many terrible things, but I was powerless to stop it. You know what I mean? I wasn't, I could have changed those things about as likely as I could change the course of the space shuttle in mid-flight. I had no power. So what is this guilt thing about? I mean, guilt is saying somehow I had the power to do something terrible
Mm.
when I didn't. So screw guilt. And the reality is I'm accountable for my actions. I have to make things right. I have to clean my side of the street, but I don't have to beat myself up because, like I said, I don't have the kind of power to make myself feel so terribly guilty about things I did that were just, let's face it, they were not very good. They were pretty ugly and pretty sad and pretty pathetic and very selfish. And I've done them.
Mm-hmm.
But, as I look back on what the things that I did, I realized I was going to do that no matter what. I didn't
Huh.
sit there and decide that, well, what's wrong with you? 20 years from now, you're going to be sober and you're not going to do anything like that. You don't want to be like this. I mean, I wasn't going, I was just doing. I was under the control of my disease. It had the power. King alcohol was in charge, not me. That's why there was that little voice inside me when I finally did the most horrible act I ever did. And that was the day I got sober. And I mean, something happened that day that got me to be sober.
Wow. Great.
And that was that voice inside of me that was screaming and yelling that that I wasn't listening to until then. Finally, I listened. But all up to that point, I was doing things that simply I didn't even know I was doing half the time. And
Wounded
I did
people,
not
hurt
have the
people.
power to do something different. I didn't have it. I don't have that kind of power. That's why I say guilt is a power grab, and screw guilt. I'm accountable for what I've done. I'm responsible. I was there. I can make amends for it. I can clean up my side of the street.
And then can you let it go?
After a while,
Yeah. I mean, what if somebody comes up and they keep reminding you of your screw up? What do you do then?
they keep reminding me of well, that
Well,
hasn't been
maybe that doesn't
happening.
happen, but it's like,
I don't know what it would be like if someone was actually do that. I would like just avoid them. I guess I don't know what I would do. I mean, you know what I mean?
sure,
I
sure.
wouldn't hang out with them.
Well, yeah, sure. Somebody has a habit of kicking you in the chin. You probably want to stay away from
That's not the kind
them.
of person I
Yeah.
am involved with anymore. There
Well,
probably was a time where I did. Who knows? I was desperate for all kinds of friends then, right?
yeah,
And then were they
yeah.
even friends?
No, probably not.
No,
Or they didn't know better themselves.
perhaps.
Well, I have a criminal record, and I don't see myself as that guy anymore. So I've
Hmm.
forgiven myself for my actions, and I got that bumper sticker the first day I was in sobriety. It's actually still in my room.
Hmm.
It says "screw guilt," so. But it didn't happen overnight where I
No.
really did it. It took some really hard work.
Well, you're the one that interviews people over 30 years sober. So,
Well, there
yeah,
you
I mean,
go.
here's my message to anyone that's still listening. It works real good and it works real slow, which means that it took all these years. This is 38 of them all piled together to get to a lot of these awarenesses and this level of comfort. It wasn't like it was a primrose path and, oh, I got sober and I'd worked the steps and then, oh, everything was just wonderful. And, oh, yeah. And I've heard speakers like that before, and I really want to get sick when I do, um, but that's not my experience. But at least at the end of it, there's always light at the end of this tunnel. And so
Absolutely.
that's kind of where I'm going. It's like, no way that this just happened. And now for 38 years, I'm tripping around the light fantastic or something. I mean, no, not at all. I mean, I've had divorces, I had cancer, I had lost jobs, got jobs, went bankrupt, made successful businesses, had unsuccessful. I mean, it's been a wonderful journey, and I've been able to deal with everything because the real security is, as I said earlier, it's not what's outside of me. Because I have that inner security and the contact with a power greater than myself and learning how to live with that power, that I have more security than I could ever have, regardless of any of the outside stuff.
Amen. You know, that's I think we are winding down here. I want to you actually answered the question before I asked it, which is really what people in recovery, early recovery do when they have an extreme sense of guilt or whatever. You covered all those bases.
Mm.
But I kind of like to leave interviews with a positive story of some type or other that has really motivated a person in recovery. It's like you think of that story and it just brings you joy or peace or something, you know. And I don't know if you knew Ernie Larson, but one of the things that he said was pain becomes power when you hold it up to grace. And you know, that stuck with me, you know. And I've got a lot of stories, but I'm just wondering, is there one really powerful story that helps motivate you or you've used to help other people? And then we'll start closing out the meeting here.
Gee, a story, you mean like an experience of mine?
Sure. I mean, I can give you an example. It's not my story, but but yet when I heard someone else share it, it became part of my life. So in that sense, it became my story. You know, like Mother Teresa, she was doing an interview for a radio station, and at the end of the promoting a homeless shelter, they said, "Well, what can we do for you?" The radio talk show host, and you spent your whole life helping others. What can we do for you, Mother Teresa? And she said, "What you can do for me is to find someone who feels alone and persuade them that they're not. That's what you can do for me." And
That's
that little
lovely.
story, yeah, and it touched my heart. So, you know, it became part of my story. So, but it's like, well, have you ever had an original thought, is what I've been told sometimes by people, you know, because I repeat what other people say so much, you know. But my best thinking got me in a lot of hot water, and I've learned to listen. So, but is there a story that you really dig?
You know, I can't really think of one. You know, I mean, there are things that no, I can't really think of one. Just not right off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are things that have been extremely helpful to me, like having my thinking uh, proven myself. You know, I often like to say that I'm grateful to be wrong so often. You know,
Mm.
so many times I think I know what's going to happen. And I think, well, if this happens, then it happens. Absolutely, this is next. Right. And so, and so many times I'm wrong. It just turns out to just not be that way. And I'm so grateful to be wrong so often because otherwise I wouldn't have any humility whatsoever. And I guess things like that and proving my thinking going wrong when and the best I can do is think the worst and it turns out to be wonderful and I'm wrong. Or
Mhm.
it didn't happen, the thing I feared so terribly passed me by. And I think things like that are profoundly impactful on me. And I share that a lot with the guys I sponsor. And I often say, well, what if they're in a bad state of mind or they're concerned or upset about something? I say, well, what if it doesn't turn out that way? What would that be like? I mean, can you even open your mind enough to see that there's even that? I mean, if I don't know what's going to happen, Timothy, and I'm really honest with myself, I don't know what's going to happen. Really, how do I know? Then
Mm.
something good might happen. And many times when I'm in a bad place, all I need is that something good might happen.
Mhm.
I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe it
just
won't.
open the door. At least
Right,
open
that
the door. Yeah.
the willingness, the mustard seed, that little bit of willingness. So,
That's a perfect story. To me, that's the kind of thing I was hoping to hear right in the close here. Well, sir, if you have any last words here, last words, not a good
well,
phraseology,
yeah,
but
right. It's not my
yeah.
memorial recording, I hope. I'm just going to say it's wonderful to be able to take the time to actually have a conversation like this with someone that about this subject, over 30 years. And I know we haven't touched on near,
Mhm.
I mean, only a little bit, even though it feels like probably a long time for a lot of us at this point, but if you've been listening the whole time, but still, I mean, there's so much more there than I
Mhm.
could ever describe. And so, but I thank you for the opportunity of talking to people like me in sobriety at this length of sobriety and coming up with this idea. I think it's a really good idea. And thanks for letting me be included in it.
Well, thank you for thanking me. I appreciate that, Howard. And I like that Howard, the name Howard has HOW in it.
Ah,
Honest, open, and willing. So uh,
now, as a
it's
joke in early sobriety, this Cockney guy, I got sober in LA, but there was this Cockney guy. And he would say, "Howard be thy name." Howard, and every time he'd see me, "Howard be thy name." I was like, "Oh, hey, how you doing, Mike?"
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, Howard. There you go.
There's a fellow that's passed away. He was in long-term sobriety. He would see me and say something like that too. Well, he said the um, something about writing it. Oh, in the book of Timothy, it says,
Yeah, there you go.
and
Yeah.
it is saying it's all about the book of Timothy and it's all about you,
Oh, that's hysterical.
So he's
That's
just teasing
hysterical.
me, yeah.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and he's gone his way. He died sober. So
Mm.
um well, I am going to close out the Incomplete Skeptic, Sober Wise Guy
Oh, I love that.
a
The
show.
incomplete skeptic. I didn't
Yeah.
really appreciate that title until just now when you said it. I
The
get it.
Oh, good. Then, yeah, I like the term. I felt like I was internally, my interior gyro was spinning when that phrase came out and went into motion. Um, so ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. I hope that you gleaned some gratitude from listening to Howard share his story and hearing a couple old timers chew the fat a little bit. And
Mhm.
so just, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help, And at least in the state of Minnesota, we live in the land of 10,000 treatment centers. You can't go anywhere without getting help if you want it. All you got to do is want it. And there's a meeting of 12-step recovery. It's like you can either spend $10,000 for a few days in treatment, or you can just short stop and come here to
Mm.
12-step recovery meetings and put a buck or two in a basket if you have it, and you can get the same thing, or at least that was my experience. So
Mine too.
yeah, you could. I think I heard a joke once, Howard. It says treatment is where you pay $30,000 to find out that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is free, and So, however you get there,
Yeah,
it works for me. I ain't judging, I'm just saying. So,
takes what it
um,
takes.
yes, sir. And as they say in India, namaste. I love you, brother. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Timothy. Love you too.
Peace out.